The talking drum stopped on a heartbeat. Marcus stood at the edge of the community park in South Oakwood, Houston's little slice of Africa, frozen between the scent of puff puff and roasted corn, his breath snagging in his throat. The New Yam Festival parade had slowed, masquerades bowing like bright birds, elders holding staffs carved with histories. Then she appeared at the entrance beneath the arch of woven palm, Amina. 8 years had not dimmed her. She wore a white wrapper with indigo swirls, Ankara head wrap tied high, and a calm he had never seen when she lived under his roof. At her side walked a child with sun-gold hair and skin pale as the inside of yam, eyes the color of the shallow ocean. The boy held a small drum tucked beneath his arm and looked around with a steady gaze, unafraid, as cameras lifted and whispers lifted higher. "That boy," someone breathed near Marcus. "He looks like a spirit." Another voice, low and slicing, said the word that had cut their marriage in two. "Not his." Marcus felt the ground tilt. He had not seen Amina since the night he shouted in their kitchen and slammed the door on both her and the crying newborn. The memory came like lightning, her tears on the patterned floor, the auntie's loud tongues, his own anger roaring louder than truth. 8 years was a long time to carry a choice. He had carried it like a stone. Now Amina was here, and she had come with what? Not only the child. An elder walked behind them, back straight despite age, the kind of man whose face looked carved by patient rains. He wore a brown agbada stitched with white triangles and held a folded paper sealed with red wax. At his side, a gourd tied with cowries clinked softly with each step. When they reached the center of the park, under the banner that said New Yam, New Mercy, the elder raised his staff. "Let the drum speak," he said. The boy tapped the drum with small fingers. The sound was warm and round. It rolled across the grass and the tents and the fried plantain stands, across the chins of men who pretended they did not gossip, across the ears of aunties who could sniff a secret like smoke. Amina lifted her chin and found Marcus in the crowd as easily as a bird finds its old tree. No smile, no heat, just truth in her eyes, steady as noon. The drum stopped, and the elder's voice, smooth as an old road, carried. "Years ago," he said, "a house was cracked by a rumor. Today, truth has come to repair it. We ask the ancestors to wait and watch. We ask living hearts to sit and listen." He touched the wax-sealed paper. People leaned in. Phones rose higher. Even the masquerade turned its raffia head. Marcus couldn't help himself. He took a step forward, then another, the world narrowing to that boy's face. So unfamiliar, so precise. He felt the old ache flexing up his ribs, the old sentence in his own voice sounding cruel in his memory. "This child is not mine." Amina did not flinch. The elder did not open the paper. He let silence spread like water over dry ground. And with that silence, the story began to return. Before the cracking, there had been a home with yellow walls and a small balcony that faced the morning sun. Marcus was a plumber who could fix a leak with his fingers and diagnose a house by its smell. Amina taught music at the community center and turned clumsy children into dancers with patience and a soft clap. Their neighbors called them sweet. He joked easily. She laughed with her whole face. They married under a big pecan tree when the Texas sky looked like a painting. Their first year hung like a festival banner over their lives, chest freezers humming with jollof and stew, uncles who argued over soccer and ended with hugs, aunties who pressed money into Amina's palm and told her to eat for two, children who ran in and out of the house like birds through a window. When Amina told him she was pregnant, Marcus danced in the living room, lifting her until her squeal turned into laughter and then into a happy, breathless hush. He painted the small room beside their bedroom a gentle gray and built a crib with his own hands, sanding every edge until it felt like silk. He talked to the baby through Amina's belly, long speeches about school and bikes and how to spot a liar by his shoes. Amina wrote lullabies. She hummed them at night while the baby kicked like a tiny drummer. The day of the birth arrived at dawn, rain tapping the roof in a steady rhythm. Marcus became a whirlwind of towels and phone calls and promises to God. In the hospital room, he watched Amina fight and breathe and fight again, watched courage pour out of her like warm milk. When a newborn cry split the air, he fell into a chair, laughing and crying and reaching, already in love with the squirming bundle the nurse placed in Amina's arms. Then the nurse turned the baby so they could see the face. Time stumbled. The baby's lashes were pale, almost white. The hair was the color of corn silk. The little hands were bleached lines against the hospital blanket. The eyes, opening and closing, were lighter than anything Marcus had ever seen on a newborn in his family. "Congratulations," the nurse said, but her smile trembled when she looked at Marcus. Amina was all softness, all music. "Hi, my love," she whispered to the baby, kissing a tiny forehead. "Hi, hi." Somewhere behind them, a cousin texted a photo to someone, and somewhere beyond that, an auntie's phone buzzed on a kitchen counter, and somewhere beyond that, a rumor began to put on its shoes. At first, Marcus could not name the panic that leaped into his throat. It was new, wild, untrained. The photographs of his family flashed in his head, rows of faces brown as cola, deep as cocoa, black as rich earth. He looked at the baby again, at the light hair, at the skin pale as yam flesh, at the eyes that had not yet decided their color. He looked at Amina. "Say something," he heard himself whisper, but he wasn't sure what he meant. "Tell me a fact that calms me. Tell me I'm ridiculous. Tell me anything that keeps the world from spinning like this." Amina, tired and glowing with post-birth warmth, looked at him with a softness he could not stand. "Our child is beautiful," she said. The word "our" landed on his chest and slid off. Fear had buttered him. He heard a voice in his head that sounded like his Auntie Tola, sharp and certain. "Open your eyes, nephew," that voice hissed. "Does that child look like you?" By afternoon, Auntie Tola was there in person, hot pepper scent and opinions radiating before her body entered the room. Her headscarf was tied like a declaration. She peered into the bassinet, clucked once, and turned to Amina as if she were a suspect in a small-town crime. "Who is the father?" she asked aloud. And the question stuck to every face in the room. Amina flinched as if slapped. "Auntie, please!" Marcus wanted to defend his wife with a shout. He wanted to gather her and the baby and say, "Get out!" But he stood still, hard a drum with two hands fighting for the rhythm. One hand pounded love, the other pounded fear. By the time they came home, the neighborhood had opinions. Old men shook their heads and mumbled proverb-light remarks about strange fruits on familiar trees. Church sisters brought yolof and side-eyed joy. "She was always too quiet," someone said on a porch. "Quiet women carry loud secrets." Another replied, "America has changed our girls." Amina tried to stay graceful. She named the baby Zion and wrote his name on sticky notes around the house like prayers. She called her mother, who lived in Atlanta, 100 times. Her mother's voice was a blanket, covering the shivering parts with calm. "Baby," her mother said, "your great-grandma's sister had hair like a cornfield. When she was born, they thought she was a ghost. Then they learned a word and everyone went to sleep. The word was albinism." "Albinia!" Amina tried it in her mouth like a new spice. "Say it easily," her mother said. "Say it like a fact. You are not on trial in your own home. But facts are gentle and rumors carry knives." The days became a parade of cuts. One afternoon, Marcus picked up Zion when sunlight poured through the blinds, and the child turned his face away from the brightness, eyes watering. "Light sensitivity," the pediatrician said. "Common in albinism. You'll need sunglasses for him. Sunscreen, hats." "Albini!" Marcus tried the word and found Auntie Tola's glare set like stone in his chest. He pictured his cousin's texts, Lionel's silence at the shop, the way the choir director had stopped mid-hug and said, "Oh," when she saw Zion. He stopped sleeping. He started timing Amina's calls. He counted how many times she went to the corner store. He started believing lies he did not build. He wanted certainty so badly that he confused it with cruelty. The night it happened, the house was already tense, air thick with unspoken things. Zion fussed and would not be still. The light over the stove flickered, a cheap bulb playing at bad timing. Amina heated formula and hummed one of her quiet songs. Marcus asked a question he had held like gunpowder. "Whose child is this?" Amina looked at him, shocked into stillness. What? The baby hiccuped. Amina set down the bottle and walked closer, as if she could go inside the question and put it out like a fire. Marcus, she said carefully, you are Zion's father. You are my husband. He heard his own voice rise, and even as he heard it, he was ashamed. But shame had no brakes that night. He shouted how the baby did not look like anyone in his family. He said he was a joke in front of the community. He said words that did not belong in the mouth of a man who had danced when his wife said she was pregnant. Amina cried, but she stood her ground. If you want a test, we will do a test, she said. If you want a doctor to explain, we will find one. But do not throw away your child because of a rumor's shadow. Then Auntie Tola's voice rose from the neighbor's porch like a trumpet. She had come to borrow pepper and stayed to add fire. Throw her out if she cannot speak a straight answer, she called, and the word out jumped through the kitchen window, landed on the table, and stared at Marcus until he picked it up. He opened the front door. He wished even in that moment that his hand would refuse him. It did not. He pointed. He made a sound like a monster in a bedtime story. Leave. Amina did not beg. She wrapped Zion, tucked a tiny hat over his pale fuzz, picked up the diaper bag she had packed as a joke shrine to preparedness, and walked into the night. The door shut. The house inhaled. Silence moved in like a relative with no return ticket. Days became weeks. The world continued to spin around Marcus, even though he believed he had broken it. He went to work, turned wrenches, laughed as if laughing were a carpenter's tool. He listened for a sound that did not come. He told himself he would start the test process tomorrow, then told himself tomorrow was too late, then told himself lateness was mercy. Meanwhile, Amina went to Atlanta to stay with her mother. She learned everything about albinism that libraries, clinics, and kind strangers could teach. She bought wide-brimmed hats and small sunglasses that made Zion look like a tiny old man, and learned which sunscreens did not sting. She asked a gentle doctor to write down the science so she could carry it like a shield. She sent one letter to Marcus with the brochure tucked inside. He did not open it. He set it on the table and ate beside it for a week. Then he put it in a drawer. The drawer became a grave for things he did not want to see. The test kit he ordered and never used, the ultrasound photo, the cork from the bottle of sparkling juice they opened the night they told the family they were expecting. In the 8th month after Amina left, news came like a ripple. Marcus's father, who had left Nigeria when Marcus was 10 and had not returned or written or apologized, died on a road near Abeokuta. Nobody had his phone number anymore. The news arrived through someone's cousin who saw someone's aunt at a funeral. Marcus thought he would feel fury. He felt hollow. He picked up the photo of his father he kept in a box. Two men with the same nose and the same stubborn mouth, the older one with an expression that said, "Don't worry about me not worrying about you." For a second, he thought the sun glare on the old photo was an error. Then he looked closer. His father's younger brother, standing behind them, had hair so light it looked like the sky had gotten inside. No one had ever told him that. Life re-stitched itself without asking permission. Years walked by. Amina built a new life slowly, like someone building a house with careful bricks. Zion grew into a boy who loved shaded playgrounds, books about creatures of the deep, and practicing rhythms on the table with 2 pencils. He learned words for his skin that were not insults. He learned that sunscreen was a warrior's paint. When he tripped on a step in the bright noon and cried, Amina gathered him and said, "Light is not your enemy. We will learn to be clever." Zion laughed again in 2 minutes and asked for plantain chips and a dinosaur story. Back in South Oakwood, the festival grew each fall. Food tents multiplied. The drummers added new patterns. The masquerade's costume gained an extra row of cowries. Marcus watched from the edges, older now, quieter, learning the work of regret. To be a man who sees what he has done and still wakes up to do better toward everyone left. He fixed church pipes for free, patched Auntie May's roof after a storm, showed the neighborhood kids how to solder like a pro. He went home every night to a chair in a quiet room and the drawer that held a letter he still had not opened. Sometimes he stood with his hand on the drawer handle, a man outside a locked gate with the key in his palm, and could not make himself turn it. 8 years is long and short in strange ways. It is long enough to grow a child's legs and short enough to keep a wound tender. It is long enough for an apology to grow roots and short enough for a memory to stay sharp at the edges. And then on a clear Saturday with taste of yam in the air, Amina returned with a boy and a drum and an elder whose face looked like he had sat with secrets without letting them rot. The elder's staff tapped the ground 3 times. "We will begin where the story broke," he said. Marcus realized his hands were fists. He opened them. Amina spoke, her voice the same calm that had once rocked their small apartment, the same calm that had held a crying newborn, the same calm that had been called weakness by people who did not know its weight. "8 harvests ago," she said, "I left this place with my son because fear shouted louder than love. I did not come back to shame anyone. I did not come back to argue with aunties or to feed the market's appetite for drama. I came with truth. I came with evidence. I came with history." She nodded to the elder. He lifted the sealed paper. The red wax, stamped with a symbol Marcus did not know, gleamed in the sun. The elder did not break it. Instead, he lifted the gourd and shook it once. A soft rain of cowries answered. "Before paper we had witness," he said. "Before witness we had memory. Today we have all 3. Marcus took a step into the clearing. The crowd murmured like river water. The boy, Zion, his mind insisted, the name he had refused to say, looked up at Marcus and tilted his head, studying him with a strange, quiet curiosity. The boy's profile, there it was. The slope of the nose, the stubborn mouth, a crease above the eyebrow that was so exactly like Marcus when he was thinking that it hurt to look at it. Someone else stepped out of the crowd then, a man Marcus had seen around but never placed. His beard salt and pepper, his skin deep brown, his clothes simple. He stood near the elder with a careful reverence, as if he had arrived in the middle of prayer. The elder laid his palm on the sealed paper again, and this time he lifted it toward the man. "When a road forks, you ask the one who walked both paths," he said. "This letter was carried across the ocean, hand to hand, by people who remembered the work it was meant to do. It is a voice from a mouth that once refused to speak." Marcus felt heat rise behind his eyes. He did not move. Amina turned slightly and rested her hand on the boy's shoulder. "I came with my son," she said softly, "and with what belongs to him." The elder nodded as if they had reached the place where a story chooses its own speed. He slid a knife under the wax, and the seal cracked with a sound so small that everyone still heard it. Even the children at the back stopped bouncing. Even the frying oil in the puff-puff pan seemed to hush. But before the elder unfolded the paper, before a single word on it could hit the light, the man with the salt and pepper beard stepped forward into full view. He turned his face so the sun lit it clearly. Someone in the crowd gasped first. The gasp spread like a match in dry grass. Marcus's knees went watery. The man's mouth was his. The nose, the stubborn line of the jaw, the way the eyes held everything and gave nothing. His. Not a stranger, not a ghost. Not a rumor. The man opened his hands, palms up, as if surrendering to the whole neighborhood. "I am Adawel," he said in a voice that carried sadness, like an instrument carries tone. "I am Marcus's father." The elder held the unbroken letter between them all, like a small, beating heart. "And I did not come alone," Adawal said, turning his head slightly. From behind him, stepping out slow like someone walking into a song, came another figure that made the festival tilt. The kind of figure whose very arrival dissolved 8 years of talk into silence. Amina had not only returned with her son and a letter. She had come with the one person whose face would answer questions before any paper could. The person who stepped forward was the living proof everyone had refused to imagine. The person who made even Auntie Tola clap a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. And Marcus, eyes fixed and chest rising hard, realized the ground under his feet was about to give way entirely as the figure lifted their head and the crowd saw exactly who had come. The figure stepped into the full sun, and the truth wore a wide-brimmed straw hat. She was an older woman, skin fair as new yam, lashes pale, hair a halo of soft white. She moved with a steady grace that came from years of learning where to place her feet and where to shield her eyes. Beaded bracelets clinked on her wrist. A light scarf shaded the bridge of her nose. When she smiled, it was like a window opening on a hot room. "I am Saadi," she said, voice warm. Yoruba music tucked behind the English. Adewale's sister, Marcus's aunt, gasps scattered across the festival field. The children at the front lean closer, whispers like sparrows. Even those who had spent 8 years telling the same story felt it loosen in their throats. The resemblance limned itself in the air, the slope of Saadet's jaw, the stubborn line of her mouth that matched Marcus's, the way she held her chin like a person who had survived both glare and gossip. Said lifted one hand, palm out, greeting the crowd as if they were old neighbors and not a jury. "Where I grew up," she said, "they called me names. Some said I was a ghost. Some said I had fallen from the moon. My mother called me by my name and told the others to carry their ignorance back to their homes. They did not. We survived anyway." She turned so Zion could see her fully. The boy took one step toward her, the small drum still tucked under his arm. Their eyes, one pair young and watery from light, one pair older and clever from practice, found the same narrow band of shade. Zion's fingers drummed 3 quiet notes on the drum's rim. Sade answered with 3 notes on her bracelet, laughter riding the sound. Behind them, Adewale stood with the patience of a man who had arrived late to a story and refused to interrupt. He nodded once to Marcus, and the nod carried apology without theatrics. The elder held the sealed paper, but did not open it yet. He tapped his staff, a smooth, dry sound that traveled, then spoke in a plain voice that made people breathe slower without knowing why. "Some of you know what you know," he said. "Some of you know what you have been told. Today we will take both in our hands and see which one leaves a stain." He looked to Sade. She took a breath, as if calling courage from an old good well. "When my brother left for America," she began, "he thought distance could save him from shame. He thought not looking at what hurt would make it smaller. He thought a man could outrun what he did not name." She glanced at Adewale gently. "He is learning." Adewale's voice carried a cracked sweetness, like a calabash mended with gold. "I was a young man," he said, "and the world said a man must be hard. Hard men make hard choices and call them necessary. I left your mother, Marcus. I left you. I sharpened my excuses until they looked like knives, and I cut away what mattered." The crowd was not used to such naked confession in public. The market talkers went quiet. Even Auntie Tola's posture shifted, as if she had been seated comfortably on her certainty and now found it a stool with one leg missing. "I had a sister," Adewale went on, gesturing toward Sadi, "who taught me what it meant to stand in a body that others made their business. I was too foolish to learn then. Years later, I met a child in Port Harcourt, my cousin's granddaughter, born with hair like fishing line and skin like peeled cassava. I saw the way they squinted at her. I saw the way the sun made her blink. I saw the way she took joy anyway, drumming on a plastic bucket. Something in me turned. A softness returned that I had thrown away." He touched his chest. "Memory taught me. Science confirmed what memory knew. Our family carries a thing that shapes the skin and hair and eyes. It does not measure love. It does not measure fatherhood." He faced Marcus fully. The field seemed to shrink to the space between them. "I should have come sooner," he said. "I wrote. My letters were stubborn. They insisted on arriving even when the road was unfriendly. I put money inside some. I put apologies inside all. I sent a paper like this." He nodded at the elder's sealed letter, with a stamp and a witness and everything a suspicious heart might ask for. "When I heard nothing, shame told me to stop. Sade told me to keep going." Sade stepped forward, her bracelets catching the light. "Albinism," she said slowly, making the word easy in her mouth, "is an inheritance of pigment. It does not change the blood that made the child. It does not turn a father into a stranger. It changes how you carry sunscreen and where you sit at noon. It demands hats. That is all." She smiled at Zion. "And sometimes it gives you eyes for rhythms other people miss." Zion's cheeks lifted shyly. He tapped the drum once, a question mark. The elder nodded toward Amina. "You said you came with history." Amina, who had been quiet, speaking only with her steady gaze and the weight of her presence, raised her chin. "When I left," she said, "I went to my mother in Atlanta. I learned everything I could learn. I found doctors who were patient. I found books that were kind. I found people whose children looked like mine and whose love looked like mine. She turned to the crowd, to the aunties who were already building new stories in the backs of their throats. I did not come back to be right, she said softly. I came back so my son could know his people. I came back because a truth carried alone becomes heavy. I came back because the boy asked a question I could not answer for him. She looked at Marcus. The question passed, invisible and heavy, between them. What did he ask? Someone called from the back, unable to hold it. Does my father have my mouth? Amina said. And the field exhaled a sound that was not quite a sigh and not quite a wound. For a long moment Marcus could not speak. The noise of the festival dulled to a hum far away. He saw as if through water the small things he had done to make up for the large thing he had done. The roofs mended, the pipes fixed without charge, the quiet ways he had tried to be a man who deserved to be called one. Those acts did not buy back a single minute of the night he told his wife and child to leave. They did not, but they were the only language he had found for repentance. He looked at Zion and saw it suddenly. Beyond the newness that had once undone him, the crease above the boy's right eyebrow when he studied something, the way his mouth made decisions, the shape of his ear. Familiarity flashed like a fish in clear water. There, then gone, then there again, undeniably. The elder lifted the sealed paper. We bring paper, he said, not because paper is better than eyes or memory, but because some ears have learned to listen only when words are dressed for court. A dew of silence settled. The red wax cracked under the elder's knife. He unfolded the letter with deliberate care, edges whispering against his fingers. On the first page, a notary stamp glinted. On the second, a short note in careful handwriting. On the third, a crisp square of lab report with words no rumor could argue with, paternity confirmed. The elder held it so the sun found it and the eyes that needed its light could drink. He cleared his throat to read, but before he could, a voice snapped across the clearing, high and tight. This theater is not necessary, said Auntie Tola. Heads turned like sunflowers to her son. She stood on the fringe of the circle, gel wrapped like a declaration of sovereignty, lips pursed into a single hard line. She had spoken for 8 years, as if the world were obliged to agree. Today her voice met a wind it could not command. Children are not born in laboratories, she added, as if adding a proverb to a soup. We know what we see. What kind of sense? What you saw was your fear, Saad said gently, without heat. And what you refused to see was the truth standing next to you, carrying a diaper bag. Laughter, small and nervous, trembled across the field and then fell quiet, unwilling to turn this into a joke. The elder lowered the paper just enough that it became less spear, more mirror. I will read, he said. Adewale lifted a hand. Let me, he asked. The elder passed him the first page. Adewale held it like a precious thing, and his voice when it came was steady. To my son Marcus, he read, and to the woman who loved him enough to marry him, and to the child who is his whether or not his neighbors agree. A wave passed through the crowd. It was not a sound so much as a shift in posture, the way people lean when they recognize themselves in something. I am ashamed of my leaving, Adewale continued, and I am ashamed of the years I let shame continue my leaving for me. I cannot buy back time. I can only speak the truth with my mouth and with paper. Marcus, I remember when you were little and you squinted in the bright sun on the Abba Road. Your grandmother would laugh and pull you under her wrapper and say, the sun is not your enemy, it is your teacher. Learn where to stand. I did not stand where I should. I stand here now. He drew a breath. I have arranged a small inheritance, land in Abeokuta that belonged to my mother. I have named Zion as beneficiary in the formal letter enclosed because a child should know that his father's father thought of him before the earth thought of his father. The lawyers require your signature, Marcus, and the boy's mother's signature, so that his rights walk on both legs. Eyes found Amina, found Marcus, found Zion, and then returned to Adewale, as if watching a ball pass above a net. This is not payment, Adewale said softly. It is acknowledgement. He lowered the page. The elder raised the lab report, the third sheet, with its flat, beautiful certainty. Numbers, names, a check mark where a doubt had been. He did not read the numbers. He simply let the stamp catch the light again. A small sound came from the edge of the circle, a paper's whisper being crushed in an impatient hand. Heads turned. Auntie Tola's face had stiffened. Something like panic flashed behind her eyes, quick as a darting fish. For the first time in many years, uncertainty climbed into her voice. "What is in that envelope?" she demanded, chin jutting at the elder's hand. "That piece of acting for the camera. Anyone can stamp anything. People buy stamps. People write letters. People lie." Said's gaze did not waver. "And people hide what does not praise them." "What are you saying?" Auntie Tola shot back too fast. Amina's voice entered the space like a needle through cloth. "I am saying," she said, "that 8 years ago I slid a letter under our door. It had a lab report. It had a note from a genetic counselor. It had a gentle explanation, printed in big letters for anyone who needed kindness that day. The letter was gone in the morning. We thought the wind had taken it. We did not know the wind in our own hallway had fingers." Auntie Tola's lips parted and closed. The heat climbed her neck, visible. Her eyes flickered toward three aunties who had always waited for her lead. Their faces were unreadable, turned to Riverstone by the crowd's attention. The elder reached into the pocket of his agbada and brought out a second, older envelope, its edge bent, its corner bearing the faint, gritty scar of a shoe. He held it without drama, a fisherman showing a net and letting the village count. "This," he said, "was given to me yesterday. A woman came at dusk to my host's house with shame folded into her headscarf. She said she had kept something that did not belong to her. She said the thing had grown heavy. She asked me to carry it to where it was meant to go." Every gaze swung in a single, almost humorous arc to Auntie Tola. She did not move. A muscle ticked near her jaw, a small drum beat out of time. The elder tapped the old envelope with a knuckle. "We can open this together if the owner wishes," he said to Amina. "Or we can let it sit as a witness to what fear will do when it is allowed to run another person's house." "Open it," Amina said steady. The elder slid a finger under the brittle flap. Inside lay a folded printout, stamped 8 years ago, hospital header at the top, a bright sticker from a clinic that had designed its papers to look like a friend. He didn't need to hold it high. Enough people were close enough to read the bold words near the top. Paternity, 99.99%. A sound rose, not a cheer, not yet forgiveness, but something like the first wind before rain. Auntie Tola swallowed. Her eyes shone with tears she did not let fall. She began, and then, as if the word were a bird she could not bear to release, she snapped her mouth shut and turned to go. Gel cutting a slash of color through the crowd. "Stay," the elder said, not loud, not commanding, but with the authority of an old road that has watched feet come and go. "Rumor must hear the sentence when truth speaks." Tola paused, back rigid. Marcus's voice came, rough from disuse in such matters. "Auntie," he said, and the word was not a plea and not a curse. "Look at him." She did not turn. "Look at him," he repeated, and the quiet in his voice almost undid the crowd. "Look at the child you made a story out of. If you are brave enough to look, you must be brave enough to listen." Sad took a step as if to place herself between Tola and the exit, not blocking, simply existing. The sun shifted. A cloud laid a soft hand over the field. Zion, perhaps without thinking, played a little rhythm. Tap, tap, rest, tap. That sounded like a heart learning a new pattern. Adewale set the letter down gently on the elder's palm, as if returning a bird to a branch. He faced the crowd and then his son. "I have more to say," he said. "But first, Marcus," he raised his right hand, as if to swear an oath. "There is another truth you must know, one that will change what you think of me and of the past. I did not only leave you behind, I left something else, and the person I left has also come today." From the shade of the masquerade tent, another figure moved, slighter than Adewale, with the same nose as Marcus, the same familiar crease at the brow, and hair pale as Said's under a baseball cap pulled low. He stepped into the light, lifted his head, and the resemblance made the field sway. The elder's staff struck the ground once, as if the earth itself needed to steady. Adewale's voice caught and then found its way. "Marcus," he said, "this is Kunle, your brother." The word brother hung between them like a bridge no one had known was there, until the whole crowd realized someone was already walking across it. Kunle removed his cap slowly, as though exposing his face might split the ground under everyone's feet. His hair, pale as dried maize husk, caught the afternoon sun. The resemblance to Marcus was undeniable. The same cheekbones, the same mouth that looked like it was always on the edge of argument. The crowd gasped, some pressing hands to their chests, others muttering prayers. Children pointed openly, too young to hide their wonder. Marcus staggered a step backward. The word brother seemed foreign on his tongue, yet his eyes told him it was true. He searched his father's face for an explanation, for a map that could lead him through this sudden wilderness. Adewale cleared his throat. His voice was quiet, yet it carried, silencing the crowd. "When I left for America," he said, "I was not only leaving a wife and son. There was a woman who loved me in Nigeria, though I had no right to her love. From her this boy, now a man, was born. I knew of him. I even held him as a baby once. Then I ran again, ashamed of the tangled cords I had knotted in my own life." Kunle grew without me. Kunle's eyes glistened, but he did not cry. He stood tall, taller than Marcus, and when he finally spoke, his words were measured. "I did not come here to shame you, Marcus," he said. "I came because a father's secret should not bury a brother's blood. You and I are of the same root. Whether we accept it or not, the tree knows." A hush wrapped the field. Even the masquerade dancers had removed their raffia masks, staring with sweat-shiny faces. Marcus felt his heart pounding against his ribs, a drum louder than Zion's small one. His mind pulled in two directions: anger at the father who had abandoned him, and a strange, unexplainable pull toward the brother who stood before him. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Instead, his gaze slid to Amina. She held Zion's hand firmly, eyes fixed on Marcus. Her silence was not cold. It was a steady flame, waiting to see whether he would warm his hands or burn himself again. Then Zion, innocent of adult histories, stepped toward Kunle. His voice was small but carried like a pebble tossed into a quiet pond. "Are you my uncle?" The question stunned everyone. Kunle bent down, lowering himself so his face was level with the boys. He nodded once, solemn. "Yes, Zion, I am your uncle." The child smiled, a smile so disarming it softened even the most skeptical hearts in the crowd. He tapped his drum with 3 quick beats, as though sealing the new bond. But Auntie Tola, still standing rigid on the edge of the gathering, could not let the moment settle. Her voice cracked like dried firewood. "This is confusion," she barked. "What kind of family brings shame upon itself in the marketplace? 2 sons, 1 father, 1 story of albinism. Do you think people will not laugh at us until our ears burn?" The elder raised his staff sharply, silencing her with a single glance. His voice boomed now, no longer soft. "Better to be laughed at for truth than respected for lies. Today the hidden things walk in daylight. If your heart cannot stand the light, it is your heart that must answer, not the truth." The people murmured their agreement. Some clapped softly, others nodded, heads bowed. Marcus's knees felt weak. He could not tear his eyes from Kunle. For years he had believed his greatest wound was the child he rejected. Now another wound had opened, a brother hidden from him all his life. Kunle straightened and looked at Marcus with steady eyes. "You asked once whose child Zion is," he said quietly. "But before you answer that, you must ask yourself, whose brother am I?" The question struck deeper than any paper, any lab result, any rumor. The elder tapped his staff again, and the sound spread like thunder over dry earth. "We have heard pieces," he said. "Now let us see what choice a man will make when the whole truth is placed before him." All eyes turned to Marcus. The crowd waited. Amina waited. Zion's small fingers clutched his drum. Adewale and Kunle stood side by side, living proof of a past he had not chosen but could no longer deny. Marcus's lips parted. A word gathered in his throat. And then, from the far side of the festival, someone shouted his name, a voice urgent, carrying a tone that made even the drummers still their hands. "Marcus! Marcus!" The crowd split, turning to see a messenger running through the field, waving a folded paper with a seal glinting in the sun. The messenger's words rang out, heavy as iron. "It is from the courthouse. A name has been filed, a claim has been made, and it concerns the boy, Zion." The messenger stumbled into the circle, sweat streaking his face, chest heaving from the run. The folded paper in his hand bore an official seal, its red ink stark against the yellow envelope. People leaned forward, murmuring like waves breaking against rocks. Marcus's stomach clenched. He reached for the paper, but the elder intercepted, his staff barring Marcus's hand. "Truth must be opened in the right order," the elder intoned. He took the paper from the messenger and held it high so all could see. The silence was a living thing. Even the breeze seemed to hold its breath. The elder broke the seal with a deliberate snap. His eyes scanned the first lines and his brows furrowed. When he read aloud, his voice trembled like a drumstick striking a cracked skin. "This document is a petition filed at the county courthouse," he began. "It states that custody of the child, Zion Adeyemi, is being claimed by one David Brown." The name rippled through the crowd, foreign and heavy. Some frowned, others shook their head. But Marcus stiffened. He knew that name. David Brown, an old co-worker from the plumbing shop, a man who had once hovered around Amina when she taught music at the community center, always lingering too long after class, always volunteering to help carry things. Marcus remembered his jokes, his easy grin, the way the neighborhood whispered once about him and Amina before they were married. The elder read on. "The petitioner claims to be the biological father of Zion Adeyemi and requests a hearing for legal custody." The field erupted. Gasps, shouts, cries. Someone spat into the dust. Others crossed themselves. Auntie Tola clapped her hands once, sharp as a slap. "Did I not say it? Did I not warn you all? Even the courts now call it out." Amina's face paled, but she did not lower her gaze. She stepped forward, voice firm, steady as stone. "This is a lie. David Brown is nothing to me, nothing to my child. He is a shadow chasing light that does not belong to him." Marcus's head spun. 8 years ago, he had cast her out for a rumor. And now, here, in front of the entire community, another rumor was dressed in paper and stamp, daring to take the son he had rejected. Zion clutched his drum tighter, eyes wide, searching his mother's face. "Mama," he whispered. She knelt, pulling him close, her voice soft enough for only him to hear. "You belong to no liar. You belong to me, and your father will see it." But whose father? The question seemed to burn in every mind present. Edewal looked stricken. Kunle clenched his fists, and the elder's staff shook in his hand. Marcus's breath came hard, his body torn between shame and fury. He turned to Amina, voice raw. "Tell me the truth. Tell me, did you ever—" Her eyes blazed. "No!" The word cracked like thunder. "Not with him, not with anyone. Only you, Marcus. Always you." The elder raised the paper again. "The court will demand evidence," he said gravely, "and a man who files such a claim will not stop with rumors. He will come. He will fight." The crowd grew restless, their whispers weaving into dread. Auntie Tola folded her arms triumphantly, though unease still flickered beneath her eyes. Kunle stepped forward, voice calm but sharp. "Then let him come. The truth does not fear a liar. But Marcus," he turned to his brother, "truth must have a defender. Will you be it this time, or will you run again?" All eyes fell on Marcus. The festival no longer felt like celebration. It felt like a trial, a courtroom under the open sky. His son's future, his wife's dignity, his family's honor, all pressed against his chest, demanding breath. Before he could answer, another sound cut through the field, the roll of car tires over gravel. Heads whipped toward the entrance. A black sedan pulled up, dust rising behind it. The door swung open. And out stepped David Brown himself, smiling like a man certain the ground already belonged to him. David Brown adjusted his sunglasses as he stepped out of the black sedan, his polished shoes crunching against the gravel. The crowd parted instinctively, whispers flying like startled birds. He wore a sleek gray suit, too sharp for the heat. His tie knotted like he was walking into court already. His smile was wide, but it didn't touch his eyes. "Good afternoon, everyone," he said smoothly, his voice carrying the arrogance of a man who thought the law bent to wealth and confidence. "I see the celebration is lively. Perfect timing for me to introduce myself properly as the rightful father of this boy." He pointed straight at Zion. The crowd gasped. Amina clutched her son close, fury burning in her eyes. "Don't you dare," she snapped, her voice ringing across the field. "Don't you ever point your hand at my child as if he is yours." David's smirk deepened. "We'll let the courts decide that, won't we? You may fool these people with your songs and your stories, but I have filed papers. Papers speak louder than drums, louder than gossip, louder than regret." He cast a sideways glance at Marcus, twisting the knife. Marcus stiffened. The insult landed squarely, but this time, something in him refused to collapse under its weight. He stepped forward, planting himself between David and Amina, his voice heavy with a resolve that had been missing 8 years ago. "This is my family," he said slowly. "You don't walk in here and claim what isn't yours." The elder tapped his staff. "Speak your evidence, man," he said to David. "Words without proof are leaves in the wind." David held up a sleek black folder, waving it like a weapon. "Inside here are photographs, receipts, and sworn affidavits. I was there when Amina needed help. Rides, groceries, even money when her husband turned his back on her." His voice rose, oily and convincing. "Does that not sound like a father's duty? Ask her, ask anyone." Amina's jaw tightened. "You offered help, yes, but help is not fatherhood. You lingered like a shadow. You never touched me, David. Never. You only touched lies." But already the crowd buzzed, some faces uncertain. Doubt had returned like a snake slithering through grass. Auntie Tola, emboldened, raised her voice. "We cannot dismiss what he says. 8 years ago, I warned you all, and now see, another man comes forward. What woman walks with so much smoke if there is no fire?" "Enough!" Sade's voice cut through the air, sharp as a blade. She stepped forward, her pale skin glowing under the sun, her bracelets rattling like warning bells. "This boy carries our blood. I see it in him. I see it in his walk, in his face, in his spirit. Do not let a smooth tongue turn your eyes blind." David chuckled, tilting his head toward her. "And who are you to speak? Another ghost in the family tree?" Gasps of outrage burst from the crowd, but Sade only smiled, calm and unshaken. "Yes, a ghost, if that is what you call the living truth. And ghosts do not lie." The elder stepped closer to David. "Your mouth is quickened," he said, "but the truth will be quicker. A test will settle this. Here and now, if you dare." David blinked, caught off guard. "What test?" The elder raised his staff toward Amina's bag. "The letter she carried years ago, the one hidden in another's hand. It is here, with us. Science has already spoken once. It can speak again. We will not wait for a courtroom to tell us what we already know." Amina's hand went to her bag. She pulled out the old report the elder had revealed earlier. She held it high, the words bold across the page. Paternity, 99%. The crowd roared. Relief, anger, vindication. It all rose like firewood catching flame. David's smile faltered for the first time. He sneered, but his voice shook beneath the veneer of control. "Papers can be forged. Results can be bought." Before he could say more, Cunlay stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Then give your blood, David. Give it here and now before all these witnesses. If you believe your lies, prove them with your veins." The challenge hung in the air, thick and heavy. The crowd shouted their agreement, pounding feet and clapping hands like a drumbeat demanding justice. David hesitated. His eyes darted to the black sedan, then to the watching faces, then back to the elder's unyielding gaze. His tongue clicked against his teeth, but no words came. And then Zion, innocent, steady, raised his little drum and struck 3 sharp beats that echoed like a verdict. The crowd fell silent, all eyes fixed on David, and in that silence the mask slipped from his face. The silence after Zion's drum beats was suffocating. Dust hung in the air, and every ear strained toward David. His smirk had withered, his shoulders no longer squared with arrogance. For the first time since stepping out of the sedan, he looked like a man trapped in a circle he could not charm his way out of. The elder's voice broke the stillness. "You claim fatherhood with your mouth. Now truth has called your bluff. Will you step forward for the test?" David's jaw tightened. He glanced around. The crowd was a wall, their eyes piercing, their whispers knives. His gaze flickered to Amina, then Marcus, then Zion. For a heartbeat, Marcus thought he saw something raw and desperate in his eyes, something far older than arrogance. "I don't need to give blood," David spat suddenly, his voice louder than it needed to be. "I know what I know. Marcus was never there for her. Who else would she turn to?" Murmurs rippled again, old suspicions feeding on new fuel. Marcus felt the sting of truth in David's barb. He hadn't been there, not when it mattered. But this time, he refused to let shame choke him. He stepped forward, his voice steady. "She never turned to you," Marcus said, his eyes locked on David's. "You were a jackal waiting by the door, hoping the storm would leave scraps. But this—" He gestured at Zion, his son standing small but firm, drum clutched in his arms. "This is not your scrap. He is my son." The crowd roared in approval. Some clapped, some stamped their feet. Amina's hand trembled where it held Zion's shoulder, but her eyes, wet with tears, shone fiercely. David's composure cracked. His voice rose, trembling with anger. "Do you think this community cares for him? A child like that?" He jabbed a finger at Zion's pale skin, his light hair. "Will always be mocked, always be cast out. I was the only one willing to take him as he is. You think your pride will protect him? You think your words will give him a place in this world?" Gasps and shouts broke through the crowd. Some hissed at David. Others turned their faces away in disgust. Before Marcus could respond, Sade stepped forward. Bracelets clinking, her presence commanding silence again. She looked David squarely in the eye. "The child you call cursed," she said, "is the same as me. Did the sun kill me? Did mockery erase me? I stand here, whole, and this boy will stand stronger, because he will not walk alone. He has family. He has blood. He has truth." Her words struck like a spear. David staggered back a step, his face pale now, his arrogance slipping like ash. The elder tapped his staff once more. "Your mask has fallen, David. You did not come for the boy. You came for what you thought he carried." The crowd shifted uneasily. "What does he mean?" voices asked. "What does the boy carry?" Adewale's voice, tired but clear, answered, "My inheritance." All eyes turned to him. He raised his hand, trembling but firm. "The land in Abeokuta, the property in my mother's name, it is written for Zion. Word travels, papers leak, and jackals follow the scent of meat." The revelation hit like a hammer. Murmurs flared into shouts. Some spat David's name with disgust. Others shook their heads at the ugliness of greed dressed as fatherhood. David's face twisted. "So what if I did?" he barked, mask torn away now. "Why should that boy, why should any boy who isn't even his," he pointed wildly at Marcus, "inherit what he doesn't deserve? I deserve it. I stood by Amina when he didn't. I deserve it." The elder's staff slammed against the ground, thunderous. "Enough! Greed has spoken clearly. You have no place here." Two strong young men from the crowd stepped forward, grabbing David by the arms. He fought, struggling, shouting curses, but his voice was swallowed by the noise of the people who had turned against him. As they dragged him toward the sedan, his final words cracked across the field. "This isn't over. You'll see me again, in court or in blood." The car door slammed. The sedan roared to life and sped away, leaving a trail of dust behind. The festival square was quiet again, the kind of quiet that follows a storm. Marcus turned, his eyes finding Zion's. For the first time there was no doubt, no fear, only the truth reflected back at him. He knelt, voice breaking as he whispered, "Forgive me, my son. I was blind, but not again. Never again." Zion's small hands reached out, resting on his father's shoulders. He didn't speak, but the drum in his arms thudded softly against Marcus's chest, a rhythm of belonging. And yet, even in that moment of healing, a shadow lingered, because David's words, venomous and final, clung to the air like smoke. This isn't over. The dust from David's car had barely settled when the drums of the festival resumed, hesitant at first, then louder, as if the community itself was trying to chase away the shadow he left behind. Children resumed dancing, elders clapped slowly, and vendors began calling out the prices of Puff Puff and Suya once more. But beneath the rhythm, unease lingered. Marcus remained kneeling before Zion, his hands still on the boy's small shoulders. For the first time in 8 years, he felt the weight of fatherhood not as suspicion or fear, but as truth. Zion looked at him with eyes that held no judgment, only curiosity, only hope. "I will protect you," Marcus whispered, "no matter what comes." Amina's eyes softened, though her body remained taut, every muscle ready for another blow from fate. She looked at Marcus long and hard, and finally she said quietly, "Do not make promises lightly, Marcus. Not anymore." The elder, seeing the moment, raised his staff and spoke. "Let the ancestors and the living alike bear witness. This boy belongs here. He belongs to blood, to truth, and to future. No shadow can erase what the sun has revealed." The crowd erupted in cheers this time, genuine, unrestrained, fierce. For the first time in years, Amina's face cracked into a small, tired smile. She held Zion close, and for a heartbeat, peace seemed possible. But peace in stories is fragile. 3 nights later, peace shattered. It was past midnight when Marcus woke to the sound of tires screeching outside his house. He sat up, heart pounding. Headlights cut across the thin curtains, and before he could move, a stone smashed against his window. Glass rained onto the floor. He rushed to the front door, only to find a message scrawled in red paint across the wall. "Zion is mine." His blood froze. He stumbled back as Amina rushed from the bedroom, clutching Zion in her arms, the boy rubbing his sleepy eyes. Kunle, who had been staying with them since the festival, stormed out from the guest room, fists clenched. "They've marked this house," Kunle growled, staring at the words. Marcus's voice shook with rage. "David, it's him! He's not finished!" The next morning, the community gathered again, this time not for drums or food, but for fear. News spread quickly. Other families had heard noises at night, strange cars idling at the edge of the neighborhood. Some whispered that David had allies, men who did not fear shame, men who could be bought to fight his battles. The elder summoned Marcus, Amina, Zion, and the rest of the family to his compound. He sat cross-legged beneath the shade of a great iroko tree, his staff across his lap. "This man does not only seek land," the elder said gravely. "He seeks to tear apart what truth has already mended. You must prepare for a greater fight, not of fists, but of endurance, of patience, of unity. If your house is divided, he will enter like wind through cracks." Adewale, Marcus's father, bowed his head. "I failed once by running from responsibility. I will not fail again. We must stand together." Amina spoke then, her voice quiet but firm. "Standing together is not enough. We must prove ourselves stronger than his lies, not only before the elders here, but before the law itself. If we don't, he will keep coming, louder each time." The elder nodded. "Then you must be ready to carry this battle into the courtroom. But beware, truth may be simple, but courts are not." Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked at Zion, at Amina, at the brother he had only just met, and at the father who had finally returned. "Then let the courts hear us. Let them hear the truth David cannot bury." But even as he spoke, Zion tugged at his sleeve. The boy's eyes were wide, his small voice quivering. "Papa," he whispered, "what if he tries to take me before the court decides?" The question hit Marcus harder than any stone, harder than any insult, and for the first time, he realized the battle ahead wasn't just about truth. It was about keeping his son safe in a world where greed wore many masks. And somewhere, in the shadows beyond the elder's compound, unseen eyes were watching. The days leading up to the court hearing were thick with tension. Marcus could feel it in every glance from neighbors, in every whisper that floated through the market stalls, in every hushed conversation that paused when he walked by. David's accusations had cracked open old suspicions, and though the paternity report was clear, Marcus knew papers alone would not silence doubt. At night, sleep rarely came. He would lie awake, staring at the ceiling while Amina curled protectively around Zion. The boy slept soundly, his small chest rising and falling with the innocence of someone who did not yet grasp the weight of the world pressing down on his family. Marcus envied him. Kunle stayed close, patrolling the yard like a guard dog, his shadow long under the moonlight. Once Marcus heard him mutter, "If David comes here in the night, I will end it with my fists." But Marcus knew fists wouldn't solve this war. David wasn't just a man, he was a man with papers, lawyers, and a hunger sharpened by greed. The elder gathered the family again, this time with community leaders and church elders present. They sat in a circle, the air heavy with palm wine and the faint scent of burning incense. "The boy is not only Amina's or Marcus's," the elder declared. "He is ours. If the court is the battlefield, then we must arm them with witnesses, with history, with unity." Sade spoke next, her bracelets chiming softly. "I will testify. Let them see me. Let them see Zion. Let them see the truth written in our bodies. Let them try to deny what their own eyes cannot escape." Adewale raised his hand. "And I will confess my failures. The court must hear that lies grow where fathers abandon. My silence fed David's arrogance. My voice will starve it." The plan was set. The family would go together, Amina, Marcus, Zion, Kunle, Sade, and Adewale, like branches bound into one broom, unbreakable. The morning of the trial, the courthouse steps swarmed with people. Some came out of curiosity, some out of loyalty, and some out of hunger for scandal. News of the case had spread beyond the community. Newspapers and bloggers whispered about the child whose paternity shook two families. Inside, the courtroom buzzed. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair tied into a bun, presided with sharp eyes that missed nothing. David sat at one table, his lawyer slick in a navy suit. He looked confident, flashing his grin to the cameras like a man already victorious. Across the aisle, Marcus sat with Amina, their lawyer, a younger man from the community who had grown up under the elder's mentorship, organizing their papers. Zion sat between his parents, swinging his feet nervously, clutching his small drum like a talisman. When the bailiff called the court to order, silence swept the room. The judge's gavel struck once. Case number 1457, David Brown versus Amina Adeyemi and Marcus Adeyemi, petition for custody. David's lawyer rose first, speaking with polished arrogance. "Your Honor, we bring forth undeniable evidence that David Brown has acted in the role of father for young Zion Adeyemi. Financial support, companionship, and presence when the supposed legal father abandoned his duties. This child deserves stability, and my client has proven himself the only one capable of providing it." The words stung Marcus like nettles. He clenched his jaw, fighting the shame that threatened to crawl back into his bones. But then Amina's hand slipped into his, grounding him. He inhaled deeply. Their lawyer rose. "Your Honor, today is not about rumors dressed in fine suits. It is about truth. Truth that has been tested, documented, and lived. We will show beyond doubt that Zion is the son of Marcus and Amina Adeyemi, and that no lie, however persistent, can erase blood." The judge nodded, expression unreadable. "Proceed." One by one, the witnesses were called. Sade stepped forward, her pale skin glowing under the fluorescent lights. She spoke calmly, telling her story of growing up with albinism in Nigeria, of being mocked, of being misunderstood. Then she turned toward Zion, who watched her with wide eyes and said, "When I see him, I see myself. He is us. He is family." Murmurs swept through the courtroom. Even the judge leaned slightly forward, eyes softening. Next, Adewale took the stand. He confessed his abandonment, his silence, his shame. His voice cracked as he spoke, but his honesty was undeniable. "I failed my son Marcus, but I will not fail my grandson. This child is ours. He carries our blood, our name, our inheritance. That is truth. David shifted in his seat, his smirk slipping. Finally, Amina stood, her back straight, her voice calm but firm. For 8 years I raised Zion alone, because the man I loved allowed fear to speak louder than trust. But I never wavered in knowing whose child he was. Not once. I have nothing to hide. She held up the original paternity report, placing it on the evidence table. This paper told the truth 8 years ago. It tells the truth today. The judge examined the report, her brow furrowed, her lips pressing into a thin line. David's lawyer leapt to his feet. Forgery! We contest the authenticity of this so-called evidence. The judge raised a hand, silencing him. Then we will settle this once and for all. Court will order a fresh DNA test, conducted immediately, supervised by this court. The results will be binding. The announcement struck the courtroom like lightning. Gasps echoed, some hopeful, some fearful. David sat back, pale now, his grin gone. Marcus, meanwhile, felt something rise in his chest. Fear, yes, but also relief. This was the moment. No more whispers, no more shadows. Only truth, sealed in science. The judge's gavel struck again. Court is adjourned until results are ready. Both parties remain bound to the court until then. As the crowd spilled from the courtroom, Zion tugged at Marcus's sleeve, whispering, Papa, will the test tell them what we already know? Marcus knelt, cupping his son's face. Yes, he whispered. This time, everyone will hear it. But as they stepped outside, a figure lingered near the courthouse gates, watching with narrowed eyes, a phone pressed to his ear. David was not finished. Even if the test proved the truth, he had another plan waiting in the shadows. What do you think David's next move will be if the DNA test proves Marcus is Zion's father? Will he give up, or will his greed push him to darker choices? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to see how this battle unfolds, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. The waiting days were the longest Marcus had ever lived. Each sunrise felt like a hammer striking his chest, each night like a shadow whispering doubts he thought he had buried. The court had ordered the DNA test at a state-certified lab, and until the results returned, everything hung in the balance. At home, the atmosphere was fragile. Amina moved through the house with quiet determination, cooking, cleaning, humming Zion to sleep. But Marcus could see the fatigue in her eyes, the weight of years crashing back on her shoulders. Zion sensed the tension too. He kept close to his mother, his small drum never far from reach, as though its rhythms might shield him from the storm of adult battles. Kunle prowled the perimeter like a soldier, watchful, tense. Twice he chased off men loitering in cars near the compound. David's eyes, he muttered darkly. He is waiting for something. Sade spent her evenings telling Zion's stories under the mango tree, tales of trickster tortoises, brave hunters, and children who outsmarted monsters with only their wits. Zion laughed at the right parts, his voice bright, but Marcus noticed the boy often glance at the gate as if expecting danger to slip through. On the third morning, a knock rattled the door. A courier stood outside, an envelope in hand stamped with the state's seal. The air seemed to thicken as Marcus signed for it. He held the paper in his hands, his palms sweating, his breath shallow. Open it, Amina urged, her voice taut. But Marcus froze. His mind replayed the night he had doubted her, the night he had pointed to the door and told her to leave. What if, despite everything, they were wrong? What if the test betrayed them? What if he was about to shatter his son's world again? Adewale stepped forward, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. Son, truth does not fear opening. Open it. With trembling fingers, Marcus tore the seal. The room leaned in as he unfolded the paper. His eyes scanned the bold black print. For a moment he could not speak. Then his voice came, cracked with emotion, but clear enough for everyone to hear. Paternity, 99%. Zion Adeyemi is my biological son. The room erupted. Sade clapped her bracelets together with joy. Amina burst into tears, pulling Zion close to her chest. Kunle punched the air, his voice ringing. Truth has spoken. Marcus sank to his knees, overwhelmed. Zion ran into his arms, wrapping him in a fierce hug. I told you, Papa. the boy whispered. The drum doesn't lie. For the first time in years, Marcus wept openly. He clutched his son, burying his face in the child's hair, letting the tears wash away 8 years of doubt. Amina knelt beside them, her hand resting on both their backs, her sobs mixing with his. But outside, beyond the compound walls, another storm brewed. That same morning, David sat in a bar with two men whose faces were hard and unfriendly. His phone buzzed with a message. He opened it, eyes narrowing at the result. The glass in his hand shattered against the table. So, the court won't give me the boy, he muttered, venom dripping from each word. Fine. If I can't win with paper, I'll take him another way. The men beside him exchanged grim looks but said nothing. David leaned forward, his grin cold and dangerous now. We don't wait for the court. We don't wait for their celebration. The boy will be mine by nightfall. And somewhere across town, as the Adeyemi family embraced their long-awaited vindication, danger was already on its way. The sun set in a blaze of orange and purple, painting the sky like a promise of peace. For the first time in years, Marcus walked through the community with his head high, Zion's small hand wrapped securely in his. The paternity result had spread quickly. Neighbors congratulated them. Church elders clasped his hand. Children ran ahead singing songs about drums that told the truth. Amina walked beside him, her beauty glowing even beneath the fatigue, her heart finally lighter. Said followed, her bracelets catching the fading light, while Kunle trailed at the rear, ever watchful. Edewale, humbled but proud, leaned on his staff, a man finally reclaiming the family he had nearly lost. That night, the compound was alive. Women brought trays of jollof rice, agusi soup, and puff-puff. Men raised gourds of palm wine and toasts. Even Auntie Tola, shame but quieter now, slipped inside, placing a small calabash of pepper soup on the table without a word. It was her unspoken apology. Laughter filled the air. Zion played his drum, the rhythm light and joyful. The elder raised his staff and spoke. The ancestors have seen the truth and stamped it with their seal. Let no rumor, no greed, no enemy undo what has been restored. The crowd cheered. Marcus lifted Zion into the air, his voice breaking with joy. This is my son. But joy is a fragile shield. Later that night, when the last guests had gone and silence settled over the compound, the danger came. The first sign was the dog's frantic barking. Kunle rose from his mat instantly, muscles taut, scanning the yard. He heard it then, footsteps too careful, too deliberate. Shadows slipped along the fence. Marcus, he hissed, bursting into the house. They're here. Amina woke with a start, clutching Zion to her chest. Marcus grabbed a lantern, his heart thundering. Who? Before Kunle could answer, the sound of splintering wood echoed. The back gate had been forced open. 3 men in dark clothing stormed into the yard, faces hidden, moving with the precision of men used to violence. Behind them, David's figure emerged, his grin sharp in the moonlight. Take the boy, David barked. Amina screamed, clutching Zion tighter. Marcus moved in front of them, fists clenched, every muscle coiled with fear and fury. Over my dead body, one of the intruders lunged. Kunle met him with a bone-crushing punch, the crack of bone loud in the night. Another swung a pipe at Marcus. He blocked it clumsily, pain shooting through his arm, but he held his ground. David stepped closer, his voice venomous. Marcus, don't be a fool. You can't protect him forever. Give me the boy, and maybe I'll let the rest of you live in peace. Marcus's eyes blazed. You'll never touch him. The fight erupted, chaotic, brutal. Kunle fought like a lion, taking down one man with a kick that sent him sprawling. Marcus wrestled another to the ground, the lanterns smashing beside them, fire licking across the dirt. Amina, desperate, grabbed a pestle from the kitchen and swung, striking one of the attackers hard enough to send him reeling. Through it all, Zion cried, clutching his drum like a shield, his small voice screaming, Papa! In the chaos, David slipped closer, his hand outstretched for the boy. Zion's drum fell to the ground with a hollow thud. Time seemed to slow. Marcus saw it, David's hand, his son's terror, Amina's scream. And then, a deafening crack split the night. The elder's staff had slammed against the earth just inside the gate. He stood there, eyes blazing, a small group of neighbors behind him armed with sticks and machetes. "Enough!" he thundered. "This ground will not swallow innocent blood tonight." The attackers froze, startled by the sudden army of witnesses. David's grin faltered. The neighbors surged forward, shouting, driving the intruders back. David backed toward the broken gate, rage twisting his face. "This isn't over, Marcus. You hear me? It will never be over." He fled into the night, his men stumbling after him. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of Amina's sobs and Zion's trembling breaths. Marcus gathered his son into his arms, holding him tightly, whispering over and over, "You're safe, you're safe." But deep inside, Marcus knew David's words were true. This wasn't over. The courts had failed him. The community had resisted him. But men like David did not stop. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the compound, vengeance was already plotting its next move. The attack left the Adeyemi household shaken, but not broken. For days, neighbors streamed in, offering food, prayers, and watchful eyes. Men from the community took turns guarding the compound at night, their machetes glinting in the moonlight, their presence a living warning. No more shadows here. Inside the house, the atmosphere shifted. Marcus, once weighed down by shame, now moved with a renewed purpose. He patched the broken gate with his own hands, worked beside Kunle to reinforce the fence, and built a stronger lock for the front door. Each nail he drove into wood was more than repair. It was atonement. Amina watched him, her heart torn between lingering hurt and cautious hope. One evening, as Zion slept curled against her side, she spoke softly. 8 years ago, you chose doubt. Last week, you chose courage. Which Marcus will I wake up to tomorrow? He met her eyes, steady now. The one who will never run again. Not from you. Not from him. Not from truth. Their silence after was not heavy. It was healing. But David was not silent. Across town in a dim warehouse on the city's edge, David sat hunched over a table, his face twisted with rage. The men who had fought for him nursed wounds in the corner, whispering their doubts. One finally spoke, voice trembling. That community will not bend. They are too many, too strong. This fight is dangerous. David slammed his fist onto the table, rattling a bottle. Dangerous? I have lost too much to walk away. That boy, his lips curled, that boy carries my future. If I can't have him by law or by force, then I will destroy what they love most. Let Marcus know loss like I know loss. The men fell silent, uneasy. Even greed has limits, but David's eyes had gone past them. Back at the compound, the elder gathered the family once more. His staff lay across his knees as he spoke gravely. A man who has been stripped of lies will either humble himself or burn the world trying. David has chosen fire. You must be ready for his last strike. Sade nodded, her bracelets chiming. Then we will answer fire with light. We will not run. That night, Marcus sat with Zion under the mango tree. The boy tapped a gentle rhythm on his drum, his small fingers finding a melody both soft and strong. "Papa," Zion asked suddenly, "why does he hate me so much?" Marcus's throat tightened. He pulled the boy close, pressing a kiss to his hair. "He doesn't hate you, Zion. He hates what he can't have. And what he can't have is the love that belongs only to us." The boy nodded slowly, resting his drum against Marcus's chest. The rhythm echoed with his heartbeat, father and son in sync. But even as peace wrapped the compound in that moment, far away, David was loading a gun. His face was hard, his voice a whisper only he could hear. "If they won't give me the boy," he muttered, "then I will make sure no one has him." The final confrontation was no longer a matter of if, it was only a matter of when. And when it came, it would test every vow, every bond, every drop of courage the Adeyemis had left. The night of reckoning came with no warning. The moon hung low, swollen and red, casting strange shadows across the compound. Marcus had just finished securing the gates when the silence split with the sharp crack of gunfire. A scream rose from the street, followed by the pounding of boots. "Inside! Now!" Kunle shouted, pulling Amina and Zion toward the house. Marcus grabbed a cutlass from the wall, heart slamming against his ribs. The neighbors on watch cried out, their machetes clashing as figures in dark clothing stormed through the outer yard. And at the front, gripping a pistol with shaking hands, was David. His face was wild, twisted with desperation. "Give me the boy," he roared, "or I'll burn this whole place to the ground." The elder appeared in the doorway, his staff glowing faintly under the moonlight, his voice steady. "David, you have crossed the line. This ground is not yours to claim." David raised the gun toward him. "Old man, move, or die with them." A hush fell over the yard. For a breathless moment, time seemed frozen. Zion clung to his mother's wrapper, trembling, his little drum clutched tight against his chest. Marcus stepped forward, planting himself between David and his family. "If you want my son," he said, his voice deep, unshaken, "you'll have to go through me." David sneered, his finger twitching on the trigger. "Then so be it." Before he could fire, a sound split the night. Boom, boom, boom. Zion had lifted his drum and struck it, 3 powerful beats that echoed like thunder. The sound was deeper than any child's drum should be, rolling through the compound, vibrating the ground. The air grew heavy. The mango tree's leaves shivered though no wind blew. The crowd gasped as a presence filled the yard, old, unseen, but undeniable. The ancestors had heard the call. David stumbled back, his gun hand trembling. What is this?" he stammered. The elder lifted his staff high. "The blood you seek does not belong to you. You cannot steal what the ancestors themselves guard." His staff struck the earth, and the vibration spread like a ripple in water. David fired. The shot cracked through the night, but the bullet struck the mango tree, splintering bark, nowhere near Marcus. The pistol jammed on the second pull, clicking uselessly. Panic lit David's eyes. The neighbors surged forward, shouting, their machetes flashing. Cunley lunged, tackling one of David's hired men. The rest scattered into the night, fear overwhelming greed. David fought wildly, but Marcus was on him in a heartbeat. The 2 men grappled, rolling across the dirt, Marcus fueled by years of regret and a father's fury. With a final heave, Marcus pinned David to the ground, the cutlass at his throat. His voice was raw, trembling with rage. "You tried to take my son. You tried to break my family. This ends now." David's eyes darted wildly, sweat pouring down his face. "Kill me then," he spat, "and prove I was right, that you're no better than me." For a long moment, the blade hovered, the crowd holding its breath. Then Marcus threw the cutlass aside, his voice fierce. "No, I will not stain my hands with your ruin. You will answer before the law, not the grave." The neighbors bound David's hands with rope, dragging him to his feet. He thrashed, cursing, but his words had no power now. The community had seen his greed, his violence, his lies stripped bare. The elder spoke once more, his staff steady. "David Brown, you came with fire, but truth has quenched you. From this day, you are banished from this soil. You will face the law of men, and beyond it, the judgment of the ancestors." As David was hauled away into the night, Zion stepped forward, small and trembling, but his drum steady in his hands. He struck it once. Boom! A single note that rang like finality. The crowd erupted in cheers, relief flooding the compound. Amina fell to her knees, clutching Zion, tears pouring down her face. Marcus wrapped them both in his arms, his own sobs mingling with hers. Kunle and Sade stood close, shoulders squared, a wall of strength around them. Adewale bowed his head, whispering thanks to the ancestors for mercy granted. The elder raised his staff high, his voice carrying across the night. "Let it be known, truth has triumphed. Fear has no home here. This child belongs not only to his parents, but to all of us. He is Zion, our light, our future." The people echoed his words, chanting Zion's name, until the night trembled with it. And as the moon climbed higher, Marcus looked into his son's eyes that reflected both past wounds and future hope. He whispered a vow that carried the weight of every mistake and every redemption. "Never again will I doubt you, my son. Never again." The boy smiled, tapping his drum softly, a rhythm of peace. And in that rhythm, the story closed. Not with despair, but with truth, unity, and the promise that no lie, no greed, no shadow could ever tear their family apart again.